Bloodmoonrunner. Chapter 1. The Last Run. The Model T's engine coughed like a dying man as James cranked the wheel hard left, mud spraying from the tires. In the back, crates of Canadian whiskey rattled and clinked, each bottle worth its weight in gold now that the Volstead Act had turned every speakeasy into a fortune waiting to be made. The October moon hung fat and red above the Michigan woods, painting everything the color of old blood. "Slower, James. You're going to shake every damn bottle foam." Tommy Galani shouted from the passenger seat, one hand braced against the dashboard, the other resting on the Thompson submachine gun across his lap. Tommy was a Chicago boy, sent up by Capone's organization to make sure this northern route stayed profitable. He had slick back hair, a pencil mustache, and eyes that had seen too many men die too young. "You want slow, you can walk," James muttered, but he eased off the accelerator. At 26, he was the youngest of the crew, but he knew these woods better than any of them. He'd grown up hunting these forests with his father before the war, before France, before he'd learned that men died easier than deer and screamed a hell of a lot louder. In the back seat, Vinny Russo chain-smoked Lucky Strikes and cleaned his 1911 pistol for the third time that hour. Vinny had a nervous energy that never quit, fingers always moving, always fidgeting. "Any of you boys hear that?" he asked suddenly. "Hear what?" Big Mike O'Donnell rumbled from beside him. Mike was aptly named, 6'4" and built like a brick shithouse, with hands that could crush a man's windpipe as easily as shaking hands. He carried a sawed-off shotgun and a hunting knife that had gutted more than deer in its time. Exactly. No crickets. No night birds. Nothing. Vinny's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. James felt it too, that predatory silence that settled over the woods like a hell breath. The hair on the back of his neck stood up, that old instinct from the trenches screaming danger. He'd learned to trust that feeling. The men who ignore it were the ones who came home in boxes. "Probably just spooked by the car," Tommy said, but his hand tightened on the Thompson. They were still 15 miles from the safe house, a hunting cabin where they'd stashed the booze before making the final run to Detroit. The dirt road cut through dense forest, hemlock and pine pressing in from both sides, their branches creating a tunnel of shadows that the headlights barely penetrated. That's when they heard it, a howl, long and mournful, that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It raised every hair on James's body and set his teeth on edge. It wasn't like any wolf he'd ever heard, and he'd heard plenty. This sound had something wrong in it, something that spoke to a part of his brain older than thought, the part that remembered when humans were prey. "Jesus Christ," Vinny breathed, making the sign of the cross. "It's just a wolf," Tommy said, but there was doubt in his voice. "Lots of wolves up here, right, James?" James didn't answer. He was watching the tree line, searching the shadows between the trunks. His foot pressed harder on the accelerator. The engine whined in protest. "James!" Tommy pressed. "Wolves don't hunt this time of year," James said finally, "and they sure as hell don't hunt alone." The howl came again, closer this time, and was answered by another from the opposite side of the road. Then another. Then another. The sounds wove together into a chorus that made James's blood run cold. "That's more than one," Big Mike said, racking a shell into his shotgun. "Step on it, James," Tommy ordered, bringing the Thompson up to rest against his shoulder. James didn't need to be told twice. He floored it, and the Model T lurched forward, bouncing violently over the rutted road. The bottles in the back crashed and clinked, and James heard at least one shatter, the smell of good whiskey filling the car. Something massive and dark burst from the tree line ahead of them. James had 1 second to register it. Bigger than any wolf had a right to be, moving with unnatural speed on two legs that bent wrong, eyes reflecting the headlights like burning coals. Then it was in front of them, and James was wrenching the wheel to the side. The Model T went into a skid. James fought for control as trees whipped past. Too close. Branches scraping the sides of the car with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. They hit a deep rut, and one of the back wheels left the ground. For a moment, James was certain they were going to flip, could already feel the impact, the crushing weight of the car rolling over them. Then the wheels slammed back down, and they were fishtailing across the road, spitting gravel and mud. James got the car straightened out just as Tommy opened up with the Thompson. The muzzle flash lit up the night in a series of strobing bursts, the sound deafening in confined space of the car. Brass casings rained down on the dashboard, rolling around James's feet. He could see the thing now in the headlights, running alongside them at impossible speed. It was no wolf. It stood nearly 7 feet tall on legs that were somewhere between human and canine, muscles rippling under for the color of old iron. Its arms were too long, ending in hands tipped with claws that looked like they could peel a man open like a tin can. But it was a face that would haunt James's nightmares for the rest of his life. A wolf snout filled with too many teeth, set in a skull that was almost human, with eyes that held a terrible, hungry intelligence. Tommy's bullet stitched across its chest, and it stumbled, dark blood spraying. For a moment, James felt a surge of hope. Then the thing threw back its head and howled, a sound of rage and pain that made the windows rattle and kept coming. It's not going down. Tommy screamed, ejecting the empty drum and fumbling for a fresh one. Faster. Big Mike roared, leaning out the window and firing both barrels of his shotgun. The buckshot caught the creature in the shoulder, spinning it around. It dropped to all fours and disappeared into the tree line. Did we get it? Vinny asked, his voice shaking. No, James said. He knew, with the cold certainty of a man who'd seen too much death, that you didn't kill something like that so easily. It's still out there. They drove in tense silence for another mile, everyone's eyes scanning the darkness. The forest seemed to press in closer, the shadows deeper. James's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel, his foot keeping the accelerator pressed to the floor. What the hell was that? Tommy said finally, his voice shaking despite his attempt to sound calm. Some kind of bear? That wasn't no bear, Big Mike said flatly. I've hunted bear. That was a werewolf, Vinny interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. My nana told me stories. Back in the old country in the mountains. Men who change when the moon is full. Demons in wolf skin. Werewolves are bullshit, Tommy snapped. Fairy tales to scare kids. You saw it, same as me. Vinny shot back. You telling me that was natural? I'm telling you it was some kind of animal. And animals die when you shoot them enough, Tommy said, slamming a fresh drum into the Thompson. But James could hear the doubt in his voice. The cabin appeared ahead, a darker shadow against the darkness of the forest. James had never been so happy to see the ramshackle building. He pulled a Model T right up to the porch, close enough that they could make a run for the door. Everyone out now, James ordered. Don't stop for the booze. Get inside and bar the door. They moved fast, years of running from the law making them efficient. James was last out, grabbing his Winchester rifle from behind the seat. The night air was cold and sharp with the smell of pine and approaching winter. And underneath it, something else, a musky animal smell that made his gut clench. The cabin door slammed shut behind them, and Big Mike threw the heavy wooden bar across it. Tommy and Vinny were already moving to the single room, checking the 2 windows, making sure the shutters were secure. James lit an oil lamp, the yellow light pushing back the darkness. The cabin was sparse, a few cots, a table, some chairs, and a stone fireplace. It had been a hunting camp once, back before the war. Now it was a way station for bootleggers, one of a dozen scattered through the woods between the Canadian border and Detroit. We need to fortify, James said, his military training kicking in. Big Mike, you and Vinny push that table against the door. Tommy, help me with the windows. They worked quickly and quietly, each man lost in his own thoughts. James tried to tell himself it had been a bear, maybe sick or rabid, something that would explain what he'd seen. But he couldn't make himself believe it. He'd looked into those eyes, and something had looked back, something that thought, something that hunted. When they were done, the cabin was as secure as they could make it. James checked his rifle, a Winchester Model 1895 that had served him well in France. He had 15 rounds, plus a box of 30 more in his coat. Big Mike had his shotgun and maybe 20 shells. Tommy had the Thompson with 3 drums of .45 ACP, and Vinny had his 1911 with 4 magazines. Plenty of firepower. James tried to take comfort in that. "We wait here until dawn," he said. "Then we make for Detroit. Whatever that thing was, it's not getting through these walls. And if it does?" Vinny asked. James worked the lever on his Winchester, chambering around. "Then we kill it." They settled in to wait, each man finding a position where he could watch a different approach to the cabin. James took the east window, peering out through a crack in the shutter at the dark forest beyond. The moon had climbed higher, and its light painted everything in shades of silver and shadow. An hour passed, then another. The silence was absolute, broken only by the occasional creak of the cabin settling and the sound of Vinny's nervous breathing. James felt his eyelids growing heavy. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him exhausted. He'd been up since before dawn, had driven 200 miles, and crossed into Canada and back. His body was demanding sleep. Then Big Mike spoke, his voice low and tight. "Something's moving out there." James snapped alert, bringing the rifle up to his shoulder. He pressed his eye to the crack in the shutter, scanning the tree line. At first, he saw nothing. Then, at the edge of the lamplight's reach, something shifted. It came out of the shadows slowly, almost leisurely, as if it had all the time in the world, the creature from the road. But James could see it clearly now in the moonlight. It was magnificent and terrible all at once, a perfect predator wearing skin that God had never intended. It stopped just beyond the clearing surrounding the cabin, close enough that James could see the individual hairs of its fur rippling in the breeze, could see the massive muscles bunching and releasing as it moved, could see the intelligence in those burning eyes as it studied the cabin. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph," Vinny whispered, making the sign of the cross again. The creature's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing teeth like knives. When it spoke, James's world tilted on its axis. "You cannot hide in there forever," it said, and its voice was like gravel sliding down a throat built for howling. The words were distorted, shaped by a mouth never meant for human speech, but understandable. "The night is long, and I am patient. And hungry, so very hungry." "It talks," Tommy breathed. "Sweet Jesus, it talks." "Demons," Vinny moaned. "We're dealing with demons." The creature's laugh was a terrible sound, half human, half animal. "No demons, little prey. Just nature, red in tooth and claw. Just the oldest law, predator and prey. And you," it took a step closer, and James could hear its claws clicking on stone. "You are prey. Light it up." Tommy screamed, and opened fire with the Thompson. The night exploded into thunder and muzzle flash. James added the sharp crack of his Winchester, Big Mike's shotgun booming like artillery. The creature jerked and spun as bullets and buckshot tore into it, dark blood spraying. It howled, a sound of rage and pain that seemed to shake the very foundations of the cabin. But it didn't go down. Instead, it turned and ran, not in retreat, but in a blur of motion that took it to the tree line and beyond in seconds. The silence that followed the gunfire was deafening, broken only by the ringing in James's ears and the sound of spent brass tinkling on the floor. "Did we kill it?" Vinny asked, his voice high and tight. "We hit it," James said. "I don't know if we killed it." They waited, weapons trained on the darkness, every sense straining. James could feel sweat running down his back despite the cold. His hands were steady on the rifle. The trenches had taught him how to function through fear, but his heart hammered against his ribs. Minutes crawled by. James was starting to think the creature had retreated to lick its wounds when the howling started. It came from all around them, a chorus of inhuman voices rising and falling in a song older than civilization. James felt his blood turn to ice water. There wasn't just one of them out there. There were many. "Oh, God," Tommy said. "Oh, God, oh, God, oh, God." The first attack came from a north window. Something huge and heavy slammed into the shutters, cracking the wood. Big Mike swung his shotgun around and fired through the gap, was rewarded with a yelp of pain. But the shutters had buckled, and James could see claws forcing their way through, prying at the wood. "They're testing us," James said, his mind racing, looking for weak points. Another impact, this time at the door. The heavy bar groaned but held. Then the south window. Then the roof. Something scrabbling at the shingles, trying to dig its way through. They were surrounded. Back to back. James ordered, "Don't let them separate us." They formed up in the center of the room, for men with their backs together, weapons pointing outward. The attacks came faster now, more frenzied. Wood splintered and cracked. Claws scraped against stone. The howling rose to a fever pitch. Then, suddenly, silence. James's breath came in short gasps. His finger ached from the pressure on the trigger. He could smell his own sweat, sharp and acrid with fear. Why did they stop? Vinny whispered. The answer came not in words, but in fire. The first bottle came through the north window, the shutters finally giving way. It shattered on the floor, and flames spread in a pool across the boards. A Molotov cocktail, crude but effective. James stared at it in disbelief. The creatures weren't just animals. They were using tools, using tactics. "Put it out!" he shouted. But even as the words left his mouth, 2 more bottles crashed through other windows. Within seconds, the cabin was filling with smoke, flames licking up the walls. "We have to get out." Tommy coughed. "That's what they want," James said. But he was right. They couldn't stay. The fire was spreading too fast. The smoke already making his eyes water and his lungs burn. The back window. Big Mike said, "We go through together. Don't stop running. Make for the car." It was a terrible plan, but it was the only plan they had. James moved to the back window, which was smaller than the others and faced the densest part of the forest. He smashed the shutters open with the butt of his rifle, stuck his head out. The clearing was empty. The Model T sat where they'd left it, maybe 30 feet away. It might as well have been a mile. "Go!" James shouted. Big Mike went first, his bulk barely fitting through the window. He hit the ground running, surprisingly fast for such a big man. Tommy went next, then Vinny. James took one last look at the burning cabin, at their supplies and the crates of whiskey worth a fortune, and jumped. He hit the ground, and his bad knee, a souvenir from a German shell at Wood, buckled. He stumbled, caught himself, started running. Behind him, he could hear the cabin going up like a torch, flames reaching for the sky. Big Mike reached the car first and yanked the door open. Tommy and Vinny were right behind him. James was 10 feet away when he heard Vinny scream. He spun, bringing up the rifle. Vinny was down. Something massive on top of him, jaws clamped around his shoulder. Blood sprayed black in the moonlight. Vinny's 1911 barked once, twice, pressed right against the creature's ribs. The werewolf jerked but didn't let go. Instead, it shook Vinny like a terrier shaking a rat, and James heard bones snap. Vinny's screaming took on a new quality, something beyond pain, beyond terror. Tommy opened up with a Thompson, walking the fire toward the creature and Vinny both. The werewolf released Vinny and bounded away into darkness, moving despite the blood streaming from multiple wounds. James reached Vinny at the same time as Big Mike. One look told him everything he needed to know. Vinny's shoulder was a ruin, bones showing white through shredded muscle. His right arm hung by tendrils of meat. Blood pulsed from severed arteries with each beat of his heart, already forming a pool beneath him. "I can't feel my arm," Vinny said, his voice surprisingly calm. He was going into shock. "James, I can't feel my arm." "We've got you," James lied, hooking his hands under Vinny's armpits. "Mike, get his legs." They lifted him, and Vinny screamed again. Big Mike's face was grim. He knew as well as James that Vinny was dead, just didn't know it yet. They carried him to the car and piled into the back seat, Vinny cradled between them. Tommy jumped behind the wheel. "Drive," James shouted. The engine coughed once, twice, and died. Tommy cranked it again, his face pale in the moonlight. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. "Come on, you son of a bitch," Tommy muttered, cranking it again. A shape appeared at the tree line. Then another. Then another. James counted 5 of them, spread out in a semicircle, cutting off any escape back down the road. They moved forward slowly, taking their time. "Any time now, Tommy," Big Mike said quietly. The engine caught and roared to life. Tommy slammed it into gear, and they lurched forward. The werewolves charged. James brought up his Winchester and fired, working the lever as fast as he could. Big Mike leaned out the window with his shotgun, both barrels thundering. One of the creatures went down, its leg blown out from under it. Another stumbled, clutching its chest. But the others kept coming. They hit the tree line doing 40 miles an hour, branches scraping the sides of the car. One of the creatures managed to get alongside, keeping pace impossibly. It reached for the door, and Big Mike stuck the shotgun barrel out the window and fired point-blank into its face. The creature's head snapped back in a spray of blood and bone, and it tumbled away into the darkness. Then they were through and picking up speed, the dirt road unreeling before them in headlights. James looked back. 3 of the creatures were pursuing, running on all fours now, but they were falling behind. The Model T might be old and battered, but it could still outrun anything on 4 legs. Or so James thought. The lead creature put on a burst of speed that should have been impossible. It drew level with the car, then ahead of it. It spun and planted itself in the middle of the road, waiting. Hit it! Big Mike roared. Are you insane? Tommy shouted back. Hit the damn thing. Tommy gritted his teeth and kept the accelerator floored. The werewolf crouched, muscles bunching, and James realized what it intended a second before it leaped. 2 tons of Model T met 500 pounds of werewolf at 45 miles per hour. The impact was tremendous. The creature's body slamming into the hood and through the windshield, an explosion of safety glass and twisted metal. The car swerved wildly, one headlight gone dark, steam hissing from the radiator. The werewolf's upper body was in the car with them, still moving despite the massive trauma. Its jaws snapped at Tommy, missing by inches. Tommy screamed and let go of the wheel, throw his hands up to protect his face. The car went into a skid. James dropped the rifle and grabbed for the wheel, but he was in the back seat, Vinny's dying weight across his lap, and he couldn't reach. The Model T hit the ditch at the side of the road and went airborne. For a moment, they were flying. James felt weightlessness, that sickening lurch of falling. Then they hit. The car rolled. Once, twice, 3 times. James was thrown around like a rag doll, the world spinning, impacts coming from every direction. He heard glass shattering, metal crumpling, screaming, his own or someone else's. He couldn't tell. Then stillness. James lay on his back, staring up at the night sky through what had been the roof of the Model T. Stars wheeled overhead, and he thought distantly that he might have a concussion. Everything hurt, a general full body ache that meant nothing was specifically broken, but everything was damaged. He tried to move and couldn't. Something heavy was on top of him. He looked down and saw Vinny's face, eyes open and empty, staring at nothing. Vinny was dead, had probably died in the crash. If he was lucky, if he wasn't lucky. He'd died before, bleeding out in the back seat while James tried to save him. James pushed the body off with a strength born of horror and survival instinct. He crawled out of the wreckage on his hands and knees, glass grinding under his palms. His rifle was somewhere in the mess. He couldn't find it. He patted his pockets and found his service pistol, a 1911 that had been through hell and back with him. "Tommy," he called. "Mike!" A groan from his left. James stumbled that direction and found Tommy lying half in, half out of the car. His left leg was bent at an angle legs weren't supposed to bend. Compound fracture, bone showing. He was conscious, but his eyes were unfocused. "Can't feel my leg," Tommy mumbled. "Can't feel it, James." "Don't worry about it," James said, looking around for Big Mike. "We'll get you fixed up." He found Big Mike 20 feet from the car. The big man had been thrown clear in the crash. He was on his back, one hand pressed to his side where his coat was dark with blood. His shotgun lay next to him, bent and useless. "How bad?" James asked, kneeling beside him. "Bad enough." Big Mike coughed and blood bubbled at his lips. "Something broke inside when I landed. I can taste it." "Don't talk," James said. "Save your strength." "For what?" Big Mike laughed, then coughed again. "We both know I'm done, kid. Hell, we're all done. Best you can do is make it quick when they come. Don't let them eat you alive." "Nobody's dying," James said, but even he didn't believe it. A howl split the night, close enough to make James jump. It was answered by others, a chorus that seemed to come from all around them. The pack was closing in, drawn by the sound of the crash, the smell of blood. James helped Big Mike sit up against a tree, then went back for Tommy. He grabbed the smaller man under the arms and dragged him, Tommy screaming with every bump and jostle his broken leg. James's back screamed in protest, but he didn't stop until Tommy was propped against the same tree as Big Mike. "Cozy," Big Mike said with a grim smile. James looked at what they had left. His 1911 with 3 magazines, 21 rounds. Big Mike's hunting knife. Tommy's Thompson had been thrown from the car, and James found it 15 feet away. It was dented but looked functional. He checked the drum, maybe 10 rounds left. Tommy had one more full drum in his coat. 60 rounds of ammunition against a pack of werewolves that bullets didn't seem to kill. The math wasn't in their favor. The creature stepped out of the darkness, a semicircle of fur and fangs and burning eyes. 5 of them, including the one from the road, dark blood still matting its fur from their earlier shooting. They were in no hurry. They knew their prey was cornered. The largest one, a monster that stood a full 8 feet tall, stepped forward. It was the one that had spoken before, James realized. "The Alpha. You fought well," it said in that gravelly, inhuman voice. "Better than most. You drew blood, killed one of us. That deserves respect." "Respect this," Big Mike growled and threw his hunting knife. It was a good throw, powered by a lifetime of bar fights and back alley scraps. The knife flipped twice and buried itself to the hilt in the Alpha's chest, right where its heart should be. The creature looked down at the knife, then back up at Big Mike. It smiled, showing every one of its terrible teeth, and pulled the knife out. Dark blood welled from the wound, but the creature didn't even stagger. "Silver," it said, examining the blade. "That's the only thing that would have worked. But this," it tossed the knife aside. "Just steel, just pain." It took a step forward. "And I am very familiar with pain." James raised the Thompson, sighted on the Alpha's head, and pulled the trigger. The gun bucked in his hands, spitting fire. The Alpha's head snapped back, a chunk of its skull blown away. It staggered, went to one knee. But it didn't die. Slowly, impossibly, the creatures had begun to knit back together, bone and flesh flowing like water, reforming. Within seconds, the wound was gone, leaving only blood-matted fur to show it had ever been there. "Oh, God," Tommy whimpered. "We can't kill them. We can't kill them." The Alpha stood, and its eyes found James. "Your turn," it said. The pack surged forward. James fired the Thompson until it clicked empty, then dropped it and drew his 1911. He fired with the cold precision of a man who'd killed before, aiming for center mass, for heads, for anything vital. His bullets found their marks, and werewolves stumbled and bled. But they didn't die. Big Mike was screaming, his voice raw and terrible. James risked a glance and saw one of the creatures on top of him, its jaws clamped around his throat. Big Mike's massive hands were locked around its neck, trying to strangle it, but his strength was fading with the blood pumping from his torn jugular. Tommy had pulled his backup piece, a snub-nosed revolver, and was firing wildly. One of his shots took a werewolf in the eye, and it reeled back, howling. But 2 more were on him, pulling him in opposite directions. James heard a wet ripping sound and looked away. The Alpha was in front of him now, ignoring the bullets James pumped into its chest. It moved with casual confidence, the swagger of a predator that knew its prey was beaten. James's gun clicked empty. He'd lost count of how many magazines he'd burned through. "Any last words?" the Alpha asked. James thought a dozen things he could say. Defiant curses, prayers, pleas for mercy. Instead, he said nothing. He just met the creature's eyes and waited. The Alpha's claws flashed, faster than thought. James felt a line of fire across his chest, and he was falling. He hit the ground and couldn't get up, couldn't feel his legs. He could feel blood, hot and wet, soaking through his shirt. The Alpha crouched beside him. "You taste the fear on you," it said, "but no cowardice. That's good. You'll die well." It opened its jaws, and James had a moment to see the 3-inch fangs, the gullet stretching back into darkness. Then those jaws descended, and there was only pain. Chapter 2, Rebirth. Pain was the only thing left in the universe. Pain and darkness and the taste of blood, his own blood, in his mouth. James drifted in and out of consciousness, each return to awareness bringing fresh agony. He was being dragged, he realized dimly, dragged through the forest by something that gripped his ankle in a massive hand. Branches scraped his face. Roots caught at his clothes. His blood left a trail through the fallen leaves. Then the dragging stopped. James lay still, waiting for the end. He could feel his life running out of the wounds in his chest, could feel his heartbeat growing weaker. It wouldn't be long now. He tried to pray but couldn't remember the words. The Alpha's face appeared above him, blocking out the moon. "You're dying," it said, and there was something almost kind in its terrible voice. "I can smell death on you. Another few minutes, maybe less." James tried to speak, managed only a wet gurgle. "But I'm going to give you a choice," the Alpha continued. "A gift, maybe, or a curse. Hard to say which." It held up one massive hand, claws gleaming in the moonlight. "I can end it quick. One swipe, and you won't feel anything after. Or..." It paused, and James saw something in its eyes. Not quite pity. Maybe respect. "Or I can give you the bite. Turn you. Make you like us." The Alpha leaned closer. "You fought well tonight. Better than any human I've hunted in 50 years. You're a warrior, and warriors deserve a warrior's reward. You make a fine addition to the pack." James's mind reeled. Become like them? Become a monster? Every instinct screamed no. Better to die a human than live as a beast. But another part of him, the part that crawled through hell in France and refused to die, the part that had survived gas and shells and machine gun fire, that part whispered, "Live, no matter the cost. Live." The Alpha must have seen the decision in his eyes. It smiled, and there was a strange warmth in that terrible face. "Good. You'll thank me eventually. Or curse me. Either way, you'll remember this night for the rest of your very long life." It bit down on James's shoulder, and the pain was beyond anything he'd felt before. It was like being set on fire from the inside, like every nerve in his body was screaming at once. He heard himself screaming, too, a sound he didn't recognize as human. Then the Alpha released him and stepped back. "It's done. The change will take you soon. When you wake, you'll be one of us." James wanted to speak, to curse, to pray, but the pain was overwhelming. It spread from the bite wound like poison, racing through his veins, setting every cell of his body on fire. He could feel it changing him, rewriting him at a level deeper than thought. The last thing he saw before consciousness left him was the Alpha's face, watching with something that might have been sympathy. "Welcome to the pack, brother," it said. Then darkness took him. James woke to the smell of blood and death. He was in a cave, he realized. A large one, the ceiling lost in shadows above him. Daylight filtered in from somewhere, weak and gray. He could hear water dripping, the rustle of movement, breathing. He sat up, and the movement was wrong. Too fast, too fluid. He felt different, lighter, stronger. He looked down at himself and saw that his wounds were gone. The claw marks across his chest had healed, leaving only faint white scars. The bite on his shoulder was a puckered circle of scar tissue. But more than that had changed. His hands looked different. The fingers were longer, the nails darker and harder. When he flexed them, he felt something beneath the skin, like claws waiting to emerge. His body was leaner, more muscular, like every ounce of fat had been stripped away and replaced with corded muscle. "You heal fast," a voice said. James looked up and saw a woman sitting on a rock nearby. She was maybe 30, with long dark hair and eyes that gleamed gold in the dim light. She wore tattered clothes that looked like they'd been through hell, and there was a wild cast of her features that reminded James of the werewolves. "What am I?" James asked, and his voice sounded different too. Rougher, deeper. "You're a pack now," she said. "One of us. The Alpha gave you the bite, which means you're under protection. Lucky you." "Lucky," James repeated. He didn't feel lucky. He felt like something fundamental had been stolen from him. His humanity, his soul. "Could be worse," the woman said. "You could be dead like your friends." The memory hit him like a physical blow. Tommy, Big Mike, Vinny, all dead, torn apart by monsters, by creatures like him. I'm Gabrielle, the woman continued. Been with the pack for 3 years now. You get used to it. Used to being a monster? James's voice cracked. Gabrielle's eyes hardened. Used to surviving. That's all any of us do now. Survive. James looked around the cave. He could see better in the darkness than he should have been able to. Could see other shapes moving in the shadows. Members of the pack. He counted 7, including Gabrielle and himself. The alpha sat on a natural stone thrown at the back of the cave, watching him with those burning eyes. How long was I out? James asked. 2 days. The change takes everyone differently. Some wake up in hours. Some take a week. Gabrielle stood and stretched. You hungry? As if in response to her words, James's stomach clenched with a hunger so intense it made him double over. But it wasn't the normal hunger he'd known all his life. This was something primal, something that made his mouth water and his newly enhanced senses go wild. What am I hungry for? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Could smell it in the air. Blood. Meat. Prey. There's deer, Gabrielle said quietly. We keep you on deer for the first few weeks. Helps you learn control. After that, she trailed off, but James understood. After that, they hunted humans. I won't, James said, his voice stronger than he felt. I won't kill people. I'm not like you. You are exactly like us. The alpha's voice boomed from across the cave. The huge werewolf stood and walked toward them, moving with the casual grace of an apex predator. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. I'll die first, James said. The alpha laughed, a sound like boulders grinding together. You can't die. Not easily. I could tear your heart out and you'd grow a new one. Could burn you to ash and you'd regenerate. Silver is the only thing that kills us permanently. He leaned close, his breath hot and rank. And there's no silver in these woods. Then I'll find some. Good luck with that. The alpha turned away. Gabrielle, teach him to hunt. He needs to eat before the moon rises tonight, or the beast will take him completely. He'll wake up covered in blood, with no memory of what he did. Gabrielle grabbed James's arm, and he was shocked by the strength in her grip. She pulled him toward the cave entrance. Come on, we don't have much time. The forest was different through his new senses. James could smell everything. The rich loam of the earth, the sap running in the trees, the musky scent of animals hidden in the undergrowth. He could hear the rustle of a mouse 50 yards away, could track the flight of birds by the displacement of air, and he could smell prey. Deer, maybe a quarter mile ahead. His mouth watered, and beneath his skin, he felt something stirring. The beast, the wolf, whatever you want to call it. First time is always the hardest, Gabrielle said, moving silently beside him. The wolf wants control, wants to take over completely. You have to learn to share the body, work together. I don't want to work with it. James growled. I want it gone. It's not going anywhere. It's part of you now, part of your soul, if you still believe in that sort of thing. She stopped and turned to face him. Look, I know this is hard. I know you didn't ask for this. None of us did. But you have a choice. You can fight it and go mad, or you can accept it and stay human. Mostly human, anyway. How can I stay human when I'm literally a monster? By choosing to be human, Gabrielle said simply, every day, every hunt, every time the moon rises, you choose. The scent of deer grew stronger, and James felt his body begin to change without his permission. His fingers lengthened, claws sliding from beneath his nails. His jaw ached as his teeth sharpened. Fur rippled across his skin. Stop fighting it, Gabrielle said. Let it come. The change hurts worse when you resist. James gritted his teeth, his very sharp teeth, and tried to relax. The change rolled over him like a wave, and this time the pain was less. His body flowed from human to something in between, the hybrid form that the alpha wore so easily. He looked down at himself and felt his stomach turn. His hands were massive paws tipped with claws like knives. His body was covered in dark fur. When he touched his face, he felt an elongated snout, the whiskers, the ears had moved to the top of his head. Oh, God, he whispered, and the words came out distorted but understandable. You're still you, Gabrielle said. She'd changed too. Her wolf form smaller and leaner than his, but no less dangerous. Remember that. No matter what shape you wear, you're still James. But he didn't feel like James. James was a bootlegger from Detroit, a war veteran trying to make a living in a world that had no use for him. This thing with claws and fangs and the smell of blood in its nose. This wasn't James. The deer are close, Gabrielle said. Follow your nose. Let the wolf guide your body, but you stay in control up here. She tapped the side of her head. Always stay in control. James moved to the forest and was like learning to walk all over again. His body wanted to drop to all fours, to run and hunt and kill. He forced himself to stay upright, to move like a man even in this monstrous form. The deer were in a clearing ahead, a small herd grazing peacefully. James's predator instincts cataloged them automatically. 2 does, 1 buck, 3 fawns. Easy prey. Defenseless. The wolf in him howled for blood. Take the buck, Gabrielle whispered. Quick and clean. Don't make it suffer. James crept forward, moving with a silence that shocked him. The deer didn't notice him until he was 10 feet away. Then the buck's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. It saw him and bolted. James was after before conscious thought could intervene. The wolf had control of his legs, and they were fast. So fast, the trees blurred past. The buck ran with everything it had, but it might as well have been standing still. James brought it down with a leap, his claws digging into its flanks, his jaws finding its throat. The buck thrashed once, twice, then went still. Hot blood filled James's mouth, and the taste was ecstasy and horror all at once. He drank deep, and the hunger that had been gnawing at him eased. The wolf was satisfied. It retreated to the back of his mind, content. James released the deer and stumbled backward, his hands, paws, covered in blood. He'd just killed something, ripped out its throat with his teeth. And the worst part, the part that made him want to scream, was that it felt good. You did well, Gabrielle said, appearing beside him. She had blood on her muzzle, too. Clean kill. The deer barely suffered. I'm a murderer, James said, his voice hollow. You're a predator. There's a difference. Gabrielle's golden eyes were kind. Everything kills to survive, James. The deer eats plants. We eat deer. It's the way of things. But I'm not supposed to eat deer. I'm supposed to eat steak and potatoes and apple pie. I'm supposed to be human. You're still human where it counts. Gabrielle tapped her chest. In here. As long as you remember that, you'll be okay. But James wasn't sure he believed her. He looked down at his blood-covered claws, at the dead deer, at the monster he'd become. How could he be human when he looked like this? When he could smell the fierce scent the deer had released before it died, and part of him enjoyed it. They ate the deer together, and James tried not to think about what he was doing. Tried not to notice how good the raw meat tasted, how satisfying it was to crack bones and suck out the marrow. The wolf in him was purring with contentment, and he hated it. When they were done, they changed back to human form. The change was easier this time, like his body was learning the shape. Within minutes, James stood on 2 legs, human again except for blood on his face and hands. There's a stream nearby, Gabrielle said. We'll wash before going back. They walked in silence until they found the water. James knelt and scrubbed at his hands, watching the blood swirl away in the current. But he couldn't wash away what he'd done. Couldn't wash away what he was. How do you live with it? He asked finally. Knowing what you are. Gabrielle was quiet for a long moment. I had a daughter, she said at last. Before, she was 6 years old. Beautiful, smart, loved to sing. Her voice caught. The Alpha came to our town. Killed half the people there, including my husband. He was going to kill Sarah, my daughter, but I begged him, offered him anything. He said he'd spare her if I took the bite. James stared at her. So you did. So I did, and he kept his word. Sarah's alive, living with my sister in Chicago. She thinks I'm dead. It's better that way. Gabrielle's eyes were distant. I live with it because I have to, because the alternative is worse. Because every day I don't kill an innocent person is a day I win. But you do kill people. The Alpha said. The Alpha kills people, Gabriel interrupted. Most of the pack kills people. But not me. I hunt deer, rabbits. Once I even ate a bear, though I don't recommend it. She met his eyes. You can choose, James. Every day, you can choose to be human or to be a monster. It's hard. God, it's so hard. But it's possible. And if the Alpha orders me to kill someone, then you run, or you die, or you do what you have to do and you carry it with you forever. Gabriel's voice was hard, but you never stop choosing. The moment you stop choosing is the moment you're truly lost. They walked back to the cave in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. James's mind was churning. He'd been given a second chance at life, but at what cost? He was a monster now, a killer. Even if he only killed animals, he was still something that shouldn't exist. But Gabriel had found a way, had kept her humanity despite everything. If she could do it, maybe he could too. The question was, did he want to? Chapter 3, The Full Moon. Night fell fast in the deep woods, and with it came the moon. James felt it before he saw it, a pull in his bones, a stirring in his blood. The wolf inside him lifted its head and howled silently, calling to something older than thought. You feel it, the Alpha said. He stood at the cave entrance, silhouetted against the twilight. Your first full moon. It's special. Painful, but special. What happens? James asked, though part of him already knew. You lose control. The wolf takes over completely. When you wake tomorrow, you won't remember anything. The Alpha's smile was visible even in the darkness. But your body will remember, and it will be hungry. Fear clenched James's gut. I won't kill anyone. I won't. You won't have a choice. The moon doesn't care about your morals, boy. It takes what it wants. The Alpha turned to face the pack. Tonight we hunt. There's a logging camp 15 miles south. 20 men, maybe more. Easy prey. The other pack members stirred, excited. James saw their eyes gleaming in the darkness, saw the anticipation on their faces. They wanted this, wanted to kill. I won't do it, James said again. The Alpha moved faster than James could track. One moment he was across the cave. The next his massive hand was around James's throat, lifting him off the ground. You'll do as I command, the Alpha growled. Or I'll kill you and find someone more grateful for the gift I've given. James clawed at the hand around his throat, but it was like trying to bend iron. Black spots danced in his vision. He was going to pass out, going to die. Then Gabriel spoke. Let him go, Marcus. The Alpha Marcus turned his head slowly to look at her. You dare give me orders? I dare remind you of your own rules. A wolf forced to kill on his first moon never recovers, never learns control. He becomes rabid, useless. Gabriel's voice was calm, but James could see the tension in her body. She was terrified, but standing her ground anyway. If you want James to be a functioning member of this pack, you need to give him time. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he dropped James, who collapsed to the cave floor, gasping. You have 1 month, Marcus said to James. 1 month to learn control. After that, you hunt with us or you die. Understood? James nodded, unable to speak. Good. Marcus turned to the rest of the pack. The rest of you, with me, we have a camp to raid. The pack flowed out of the cave like smoke, moving silently into the night. Within seconds, they were gone, and only James and Gabriel remained. Thank you, James managed finally. Don't thank me yet. You still have to survive tonight. Gabriel pulled a heavy chain from a shadowed corner of the cave. We need to restrain you. When the moon rises, you'll change completely. The first time is always the worst. Restrain me? Unless you want to wake up covered in blood, with no idea whose blood it is. Gabriel's voice was gentle but firm. Trust me, James. This is the only way. James looked at the chains and felt sick, but he nodded. Better to be chained like an animal than to become one completely. Gabriel wrapped the chains around him, securing him to a thick stalagmite in the center of the cave. The metal was cold against his skin and heavy, very heavy. But James suspected that when he changed, it wouldn't feel heavy at all. "I'll stay with you," Gabriel said, sitting down nearby, "talk you through it. It won't be pleasant, but you'll survive. And if I break the chains, then I'll stop you." She didn't elaborate on how, and James didn't ask. The moon rose. James felt at the moment the first rays of moonlight penetrated the cave. It was like being struck by lightning. Every nerve in his body lit up at once, and the wolf surged up from the depths of his soul with a hunger that consumed everything else. The change took him. His bones broke and reformed. His muscles tore and regrew. His skin split as fur erupted from every pore. The pain was indescribable, beyond anything he'd experienced, beyond anything he'd thought possible. He screamed, and the scream became a howl that echoed to the cave and out into the night. When it was over, James was gone. Only the wolf remained. It strained against the chains, testing them. They held, but barely. The wolf could smell prey nearby. The woman, Gabrielle, could hear her heartbeat, steady and strong. Could imagine the taste of her blood. "James," Gabrielle said softly, "I know you're in there somewhere. Hold on. Don't let it take you completely." But the wolf didn't understand words. It only understood hunger and the hunt and the sweet perfume of fear. It lunged against the chains, pulling with strength that made the stone groan. "James!" Gabrielle's voice was sharper now. "Listen to me. Remember who you are. Remember Tommy and Big Mike and Vinny. Remember that you're human." Something stirred deep in the wolf's mind. A flicker of memory. Men laughing in a car. The smell of whiskey and cigarettes. A sense of belonging. James. His name was James. The wolf faltered, confused. It was James, but it was also the wolf. Two things in one body, fighting for control. "That's it," Gabrielle encouraged. "Hold on to that. Hold on to your humanity." But the moon was too strong. The wolf shook off the confusion and lunged again. This time one of the chains cracked. Stone dust fell from the stalagmite. Gabrielle stood and began to change. Her body flowed from human to hybrid form in seconds, practiced and controlled. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I can't let you hurt anyone." She moved to the cave entrance and howled, a long, ululating cry that carried for miles. Within minutes, James heard answering howls. The pack was coming back. The wolf in him knew what that meant. Rivals. Threats to its territory. It bared its fangs and pulled harder at the chains. Another one snapped. When Marcus entered the cave, James had broken 3 of the 5 chains and was working on the 4th. The massive alpha took in the situation with a glance. "Stubborn, isn't he?" Marcus said. "He's fighting it," Gabrielle replied. "I've never seen anyone fight this hard on their first moon. Fighting is good. Shows spirit." Marcus walked forward casually, as if approaching a chain monster was something he did every day, which, James supposed, he probably did, but fighting won't save him. He needs to accept what he is. The wolf lunged at Marcus, jaw snapping. Marcus backhanded it casually, and James felt his head snap to the side with enough force to break a human's neck. Stars exploded across his vision. "Settle down, pup," Marcus growled, "or I'll put you down." The wolf snarled but stopped lunging. Somewhere deep inside, James felt a cold clarity. He was going to lose this fight, was going to lose himself to the beast, unless he could find a way to coexist with it. He stopped fighting. The wolf, suddenly unopposed, paused. It was confused. The human part of James, the consciousness that made him who he was, had stopped resisting, had opened the door and invited the wolf in. And in that moment of confusion, James spoke to it, not with words, but with feelings, with memories. He showed it Tommy's laugh, Vinny's nervous energy, Big Mike's steady presence. He showed it what it meant to be human, to have friends, to care about something other than the hunt. The wolf didn't understand, not really, but it felt the emotions behind the memories, felt the pack bond that James had shared with his crew, and slowly, tentatively, it accepted that James was pack too, not prey, not rival, pack. The transformation was subtle but profound. James felt the wolf settle into place beside his consciousness, no longer fighting for control, but sharing it. His body was still monstrous, still covered in fur and claws, but his mind was his own again. He looked up at Marcus and Gabrielle, and when he spoke, his voice was clear. "I'm okay. I'm in control." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Well, I'll be damned. You actually did it. Found balance on your first moon." He reached down and broke the remaining chains as if they were made of paper. Most wolves take years to learn that trick. "The war," James said, the words coming slowly through his changed mouth. "I learned in the war, when the shells were falling and the gas was coming. You can't fight the fear. You have to accept it. Work with it. Use it." "Smart." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder, nearly knocking him over. "You might actually survive this after all." Gabrielle was smiling. "I knew you had it in you." James looked down at his clawed hands. He was still a monster, still something that shouldn't exist. But for the first time since the bite, he felt like himself, like James. The wolf was part of him now, but it didn't own him. He had chosen to be human, and he would keep choosing every day for as long as he lived. The month passed in a blur of learning and hunting. Marcus, despite his brutal nature, proved to be a patient teacher. He showed James how to control the change, how to shift between forms at will, how to track prey by scent alone, how to move through the forest like smoke. But most importantly, he taught James about the pack. "We're not just monsters," Marcus said one evening as they sat outside the cave. "We're a family, bound by blood and the moon. Every member of the pack is precious, worth dying for." "Even me?" James asked. "You barely know me." "I know enough. You're strong, disciplined. You fight with honor." Marcus's eyes glinted in the firelight. "And you remind me of someone I knew once, a long time ago." "Who?" "Myself, before I was turned." Marcus stared into the flames. "I was a soldier, too. Fought in the Civil War. Union side. Was at Gettysburg when I took a bayonet to the gut. Should have died." He touched his side absently, as if feeling an old wound. "Instead, I got the bite. Spent 60 years learning what you learned in a month." James absorbed this. Marcus was old, older than he'd realized. "Do you regret it?" "The bite." "Every day." Marcus's voice was soft. "And not at all. I've lived long enough to see the world change in ways I never imagined. Seen things that would have killed me as a human. Lost people I love more times than I can count." He looked at James. "But I've also saved lives. Protected people who couldn't protect themselves. Being a monster doesn't mean you can't do good. It just makes it harder." "Tell me about the logging camp," James said quietly. "Did you kill them all?" Marcus's face went still. "No, we took 3. Left the rest alive to spread the word, to make people afraid to come into our territory." He met James's gaze without flinching. "I won't apologize for what I am, for what we are. Humans have hunted us to near extinction, burned us, shot us with silver bullets, nailed us to barn doors like trophies. We survived by making them fear us. But those loggers didn't hurt you. They were just men trying to feed their families. And we're just trying to survive." Marcus's voice hardened. "You can judge me all you want, James. But remember, you'll face the same choice eventually. Your humanity or your survival. And you might not like the answer you find." James wanted to argue, wanted to say he'd never compromise, never kill an innocent person. But he remembered the taste of the deer's blood, remembered how good it felt to let the wolf run free. And he wondered if Marcus was right. Would there come a day when staying human cost too much? He didn't know, and that terrified him. Chapter 4. The Choice. It was Gabrielle who brought James the news 3 weeks after his first moon. She found him by the stream where they'd first talked, and her face was troubled. "There's a problem," she said without preamble. "A hunter. He's been tracking the pack for weeks. Got lucky and killed one of us. Thomas, the young one who was turned last year, shot him with a silver bullet." James felt a chill run through him. He barely knew Thomas, but the kid had been friendly, had helped James learn to hunt. Where's the hunter now? Marcus tracked him to a cabin about 5 miles west. He's planning to attack tonight. Kill the hunter before he can kill any more of us. That makes sense, James said slowly. If someone was hunting me, I'd want to stop them too. The hunter has his daughter with him. Gabrielle said quietly, she's maybe 8 years old. Marcus is going to kill them both. James felt his stomach drop. No, he can't. She's just a kid. She's a witness. She knows about us. If we let her live, she'll tell others. Bring more hunters. Gabrielle's voice was pained. Marcus isn't wrong, tactically. But she's 8 years old. James finished. They stared at each other, the weight of the choice hanging between them. I'm going to stop him, James said finally. I don't care what it costs. I won't let him kill a child. Then you'll have to kill Marcus, Gabrielle said. He won't back down. And if you challenge him, it's a fight to the death. James thought about Marcus, about the alpha's strength, his speed, his 60 years of experience as a werewolf. James had been turned less than a month ago. He had no chance in a straight fight, but he had to try. Tell me where the cabin is, he said. James reached the cabin just before sunset, moving through the forest with the silence he'd learned from Marcus himself. He could smell them inside, 2 humans, 1 adult male and 1 child, could hear their heartbeats, steady and unaware. He circled the cabin, looking for weaknesses, planning. The hunter would have weapons. Silver bullets, probably traps. James needed to get them out safely before Marcus arrived. He was still planning when he heard the pack approaching. They moved like ghosts through the trees, 7 strong, with Marcus in the lead. They saw James immediately and stopped. What are you doing here? Marcus demanded. I'm asking you to spare them, James said. The girl, at least, she's innocent. There's no such thing as innocent when it comes to survival. Marcus moved forward, and the pack spread out behind him, surrounding the cabin. Stand aside, James. You don't want to do this. I do, actually. James changed, letting the wolf flow through him. His body shifted from human to hybrid in seconds, and he dropped into a fighting stance. I won't let you kill a child. Marcus studied him with something like disappointment. You've learned well, fought hard. I had hopes for you. He changed too, his massive form towering over James. But you're still young, still weak. This fight will last maybe 10 seconds, and then you'll be dead. Maybe, James agreed, but it's 10 seconds you won't be killing that girl. Inside the cabin, he heard movement. The hunter had heard them. Good. Maybe he'd have time to run. Marcus lunged, and James barely got out of the way. The alpha's claws raked across his ribs, drawing blood. James rolled and came up swinging, his own claws finding purchase on Marcus's arm. First blood to him, though it was barely a scratch. They circled each other, and James could see the rest of the pack watching. None of them moved to help Marcus. This was a challenge fight, sacred to pack law. 1-on-1 until someone yielded or died. James feinted left and went right, trying to get inside Marcus's guard. The alpha read him like a book and caught him with a backhand that sent him flying into a tree. James felt ribs crack, tasted blood. He forced himself to his feet. Is that all you've got, old man? Marcus smiled, all teeth. I like you, James. I really do. It's a shame I have to kill you. He came in fast, impossibly fast, and this time there was no dodging. Marcus's hand closed around James's throat and slammed him into the ground hard enough to crack stone. James's vision went white with pain. Yield, Marcus growled. Yield and I'll let you live. Exile you from the pack, but you'll live. James thought about it. Thought about living, about running, about survival. It would be so easy to submit, to let Marcus have his way, to save himself. Then he thought about an 8-year-old girl dying because he was too cowardly to stop it. He raked his claws across Marcus's eyes. The alpha roared and released him, stumbling back. Blood streamed down his face from 4 deep furrows. James didn't waste a moment. He lunged forward and buried his claws in Marcus's chest, aiming for the heart. But Marcus was too experienced. Even half-blind, he twisted away, and James's claws tore through muscle and lung instead of hitting anything vital. Dark blood sprayed, and Marcus went down on one knee. The pack stirred, uncertain. Their alpha was wounded, badly. James stood over him, breathing hard, his own blood dripping from a dozen wounds. "It's over. Leave the girl alone." Marcus laughed, a wet bubbling sound. "You think you've won? You think this changes anything?" "It changes everything." James's voice was steady. "I choose humanity. I choose to be better than my worst instincts. And if that means I die, so be it. But I die human." Marcus stared at him with his ruined eyes, and something changed in his expression. "You remind me of who I used to be, before I forgot what it meant to be good." He slumped forward, and James thought he was dead. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "Take the pack. You're alpha now. Earned it with honor." He coughed more blood. "Do better than I did." Then he was gone, his body already beginning to change back to human form. In death, Marcus looked smaller, older, just a man who'd lived too long and lost too much. James stood there, covered in blood, his and Marcus's, and felt the weight of what he'd done settle on his shoulders. He'd killed someone, not in self-defense, not in war, but in a fight he'd started, a fight he'd chosen. He was a murderer now, just like he'd feared, but he'd also saved a life. Maybe two. The pack was watching him, waiting to see what their new alpha would do. James could feel their regard, could sense the pack bond shifting, reorienting toward him. He didn't want to be alpha, didn't want to lead anyone, but he'd made his choice. "The hunter and his daughter live," he said, his voice carrying to every member of the pack. "We don't kill innocents. We don't kill children. If you can't accept that, leave now." No one moved. Good. James looked at the cabin, where he could hear the hunter loading a gun, preparing to defend his daughter. "Gabriel, go tell him we're leaving. Tell him to take his kid and get out of these woods. We won't bother them again." Gabriel nodded and moved toward the cabin, changing to human form as she went. The rest of the pack melted back into the forest, giving James space. He stood alone over Marcus's body and felt tears running down his face, cutting tracks through the blood and fur. He'd killed a man who'd saved his life, who'd taught him everything he knew about being a werewolf, who'd been the closest thing to a friend he'd had since Tommy and Mike and Vinny died. But he'd saved a child. Was it worth it? James didn't know. Maybe he'd never know. All he knew was that he'd made his choice. He'd chosen humanity over survival, and he'd keep choosing it every day for as long as he lived, no matter the cost. Epilogue, Blood Moon Rising. 6 months later, James led the pack through the Michigan woods under a blood-red moon. They'd changed since Marcus's death, changed their hunting patterns, their territory, their very nature. They still needed to eat, still needed to hunt, but they hunted deer and elk and bear, never humans, never innocents. It was harder this way. The wolf inside James constantly pushed for easier prey, for the thrill of hunting something that could beg and plead. But James held firm, and the pack followed his lead. Most of them, anyway. How long are we going to keep this up? One of the younger wolves, a man named Daniel, challenged him. "We're predators. We should be at the top of the food chain, not skulking through the woods, eating deer like common animals." "We are common animals," James said calmly. "Unusual ones, maybe, but still animals. And we have a choice about what kind of animals we want to be." Marcus would never have stood for this. "Marcus is dead," James reminded him. "And I'm alpha now. If you don't like it, you can challenge me or leave. Those are your options." Daniel glared at him but said nothing. He was young and strong, but he'd seen what James did to Marcus. He wasn't ready to test himself against that. They continued hunting, and James felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him. It was lonely at the top. Gabrielle helped, and she'd become his second-in-command, his most trusted advisor. But ultimately, every decision came back to him. He thought about Marcus sometimes, about the alpha's last words. "Do better than I did." James was trying. God knows he was trying. But he didn't know if trying was enough. As the night wore on and the moon climbed higher, James felt the wolf stir inside him. It was never satisfied with deer. Never truly full. It wanted more. Wanted what Marcus had given it. The taste of human prey. The thrill of the hunt. But James didn't give in. He'd made his choice, and he'd stick with it. He was human. He'd stay human. No matter what it cost. Even if it cost him everything.